what's the biggest story for the Orange Bowl? What do you think the biggest story is? And I'll start. I feel like that the biggest story for me, obviously, is that the teams are completely different than what we thought we would be getting. If you look back at the regular season, there's no more Hendon Hooker. He's injured, even though I would have loved to play against him because I feel like he's afraid of Clemson for whatever reason. And he's also, well, it is in Miami, so he wouldn't be afraid of the cold there. But Hendon Hooker not there. I would have liked to have seen Hyatt. I would have liked to have seen Tillman. So we're not going to get those guys. You're still going to get Jabari Small. So that might be a good addition there to see what they can do, see how they can attack Clemson. A lot of Tennessee fans are saying that, be careful with Joe Milton. He might not be the most accurate guy in the world, but he's got a strong arm. Well, to be honest with you, we have seen with our own two eyes what an inaccurate guy with strong arm is, and it's not nothing scaring me, okay, with that. All right, so we've been there, done that, and got the T-shirt on the Clemson side of things with a big arm, but don't know where it's going. So as far as Milton, though, the running part of it, him and Small and that tempo is obviously something to be concerned with going forward. But to me, the biggest story is, can Cade Klubnik keep it going? Can he redo what he did and do better, or maybe even equal what he did against North Carolina? Al, is that your biggest story for the Orange Bowl?
Yeah, personally, I think so. A lot of people are going to be talking about the opt-outs or the injuries or whatever it may be, and this is a drastically different looking game than it would have several weeks ago, or would have been several weeks ago. So Tennessee's had several guys opt out or whatever. Obviously, Hendon Hooker went down. And it's a battle of the backup QBs, so we'll see what happens here. It's going to be fun to watch. Cade Klubnik is going to be going against a defense similar to North Carolina's. Neither of them are very good. Tennessee, I would imagine, is a little bit better than North Carolina. North Carolina is an unbelievable disaster on defense. And so Tennessee's got a little bit more than they do, probably. I would imagine we're going to see some things, that we might not have been able to see, if it was a 1 week type of game, but this is when you've had weeks of preparation. I think they're going to throw a lot of different stuff at Cade and try to rattle him a little bit. And they're really going to try to contain him, I would imagine. I mean, I think the book is out that Clemson receivers don't get separation. I think they're going to have less people back there and put more people towards the line of scrimmage to maybe spy Cade or whatever it may be. So to try to keep him from making plays with his feet. But it's all about Klubnik, and can he continue to ride that wave from the ACC championship and take that into, the Tennessee game, and then hopefully into 2023.
His mom and dad, from what I understand, could not get a flight out because of all the craziness with flights and cancellations. So they drove 20 hours from Austin, Texas to Miami. I think any mom and dad probably would agree that that's what you do. They want to see their son compete and start in his first game in college, because the North Carolina game, he didn't start. So this is going to be really his first start, which I really don't know if that's any more big of a deal. I mean, he came in and did great in the ACC championship game. So, the fact that he's starting versus, 2 plays later or 2 drives later, I don't think is that big of a deal. But obviously it's a milestone for the player, for the family, and, for the team. So interesting to see how he handles, maybe there's some additional pressure. I really don't know, to me, but let's bring in Mr. Houston Burnett, who's also made a long trip, not all the way from Austin, Texas, but he joins us in now. Houston, welcome in, sir.
What's going on? It's been a long day, but I'm here. I'm alive, barely, and hopefully alive to see the Tigers win another one in Miami tomorrow night.
Well, we are talking about Miami, Clemson versus Tennessee. Right now, the ESPN matchup predictor actually has Tennessee at 57% chance to win. I don't know if that's been adjusted or not properly with the opt-outs and the injuries there and the transfers. But as far as Vegas goes, Tennessee is +6 and Clemson is -6. So Vegas is saying that Clemson is favored by just at a touchdown. Houston, tell me, this is the question of the night right now is, what is the biggest story for the Orange Bowl? Alan and I gave us our thoughts. We both said Cade Klubnik is obviously at the forefront. We've got people in the chat saying that, the offensive line and protecting Cade Klubnik is also a big deal. What do you think?
Well, I mean, it's going to boil down to something alongside of Cade Klubnik, whether you want to say protecting Cade Klubnik or the wide receivers catching for Cade Klubnik or Cade Klubnik on the move or whatever. It boils down to him. He's the central plot of this. And you can look at this multiple ways. You could say, all right, is the offensive staff going to look at this like they did against UNC, where miraculously things got more creative once Cade came in the game, where they were able to accomplish more throwing the ball downfield, more so than Clemson's been able to see the last 2 years? Are they going to approach it like that and potentially give him some easy throws to get him in rhythm, sort of similar to what they did against UNC in the ACC championship game? Same with the wide receivers is, hey, look, they may not get separation, or at least for 12 games they didn't. And then against UNC, they did a pretty good job of doing what they do well. They got open, got the ball, got upfield, and then at the right times they got separation. So are we going to see that as well again? I think things change as the new energy as far as the offense goes with Cade running it. And so I think no matter how you slice it, as far as the Clemson side of the ball, it boils down to the biggest storyline is going to have to be something involved with Cade Klubnik.
Well, one thing is for sure, I don't think that we can go too far without saying, Tennessee on average is putting up 47.3 points per game, 538.1 yards per game. Obviously, the team is much different, but, a team that is geared towards high tempo and putting up a ton of yards and points, regardless of the personnel, they're going to want to fit them in that and be able to do that. So I'm curious to see if Clemson can contain that and, keep them one-dimensional. I think if they fit them into running the ball specifically because of their opt-outs, I think it bodes well for Clemson. But again, it's not going to be one that Tennessee is not looking to win as well. Let me ask you this. Who needs the win more? Al, we'll start with you.
Who needs the win more? That's a great question. I would say needs to win more, just because they've been pretty trash for quite some time, and now they've almost made it to the mountaintop this year. They got struck down a couple of times and by South Carolina, and then somehow that carried on to us. Just unbelievable. I'm still bitter about that, by the way, and probably will be for quite some time. So I think Tennessee needs it more in order to kind of stay where they are, and if not, even improve their stock going into next season, something like that. I think they have the most. I think they have the most to lose. Clemson, I think, is going to be Clemson regardless.
Houston, what do you think? Do you agree?
Yeah, I tend to say Tennessee in this regards. There are actually scenarios here where you can look at this where, Clemson, if they lost the game tomorrow night, but Cade comes in there and the offense looks crisp and everybody just plays out of their minds and the ball doesn't roll our way and we lose a close game, you at least can feel like, all right, well, hey, we got some tools going into next year to work with. Tennessee, on the other hand, if you lose this game, especially if you lose it in a way that you don't look good, especially without Hendon Hooker and without your two key wide receivers that are out there, that's a lot of questions for next year, especially for Joe Milton. You got this 5-star freshman from California coming in. Is that going to be a factor next year? Does that mean Joe Milton has a leash going into next year? Are they going to be in a similar scenario as Clemson was this year, where you've got a big guy that you're defending and you're going to roll with him, and then you get to a point where you're like, all right, we might have to put in a freshman? Like, there's a lot of more questions Tennessee has than Clemson does if Tennessee loses this game tomorrow night.
Well, I think both the teams can benefit from a win. Obviously, any win on the national stage can be a big deal, especially against an SEC team from the Clemson standpoint. And again, for the Tennessee standpoint, getting that postseason win when they haven't been there as much. I think it was looking at I was watching a video on BetUS where Tennessee and they're against the spread record, but it's like, they haven't played in bowl games, as frequently as Clemson has in recent years. So it's kind of hard to say, well, are they better or worse against the spread than Clemson, because Clemson has obviously played every single year in the postseason. So But again, it's going to be important for both teams. I think both teams are going to be ready to play and put on an exciting game, an all Orange Bowl. Quote from Josh Heupel says, "It's another opportunity for kids across the entire country to see the brand of football that you're playing, the culture that you have by the way you compete together. Throughout the course of this season, we've been able to show the proof of what this program is becoming and what's going on inside of our building and continuing to take steps forward to continue to compete for championships. When we first arrived, you were talking about it. A year ago, they saw a little bit of proof of it. They get a chance to see a whole lot more of who we are and what we're about." So, Al, I think that kind of backs up what you're saying. Is it seems like there's a lot riding on this from the head coach standpoint from Tennessee, basically saying that, hey, this is a place for us to prove that we've taken that next step forward.
Yeah, no doubt. I think those comments echo exactly what I was saying. I don't know if you saw this, but we do have a Tennessee fan in the comments over here, the only Tennessee fan that lives in this area, and we
yeah,
happen
let me
to
know. I'm going
love
back and forth. If Phil is saying something, let me know.
Phil is saying something. He's asking if Tennessee can get it done in the red zone because that's something Hooker excelled at. And the tempo teams tend to struggle sometimes in the red zone, and Clemson's got a good red zone defense. And he's 100% right about UNC. They move the ball up and down the field, which is one thing I was irritated about in the ACC championship game, but they clamp down in the red zone. Are they going to be able to do that? I got to tell you, I don't think they're going to be able to get it done within the red zone. I think they're going to need to score off of big plays if they're going to score a lot of touchdowns, because an inaccurate passer and a tighter zone with smaller windows is not a recipe for success.
Yeah. Houston, what's your thoughts on the red zone success for Tennessee?
I mean, you see, there's a lot of similarities. People don't want to admit this just because the difference in ACC and SEC and whatnot, but there's a lot of similarities between North Carolina and Tennessee. A lot. Both are up and down tempo teams. Both, when they're clicking, they can score a ton of points. Both defenses are pretty suspect at best. And I think both of these, especially when you look at Tennessee's case, if they get into the red zone, if you don't have a guy that can hit these throws, Drake May is an excellent quarterback. He even struggled in the red zone against Clemson. We don't know yet how Joe Milton will do. You think back to the South Carolina game, Tennessee was able to move the ball and score on South Carolina until Hooker went out with an injury. And from that point on, it was curtains from that. And I'm not going to say that Tennessee's going to, either way, never going to score a point or score a bunch of points or whatever. I just think it's going to be more of a struggle. If they struggle with South Carolina's defensive front, I surely think that they'll struggle with ours. That's why I put out a score prediction today on RevTheRock.com. I said 38-30. That could go either way. Clemson could score more, Clemson could score less, whatever and ever. But I think that Tennessee is going to have its fair share of struggles.
Well, I appreciate Phil getting in, being our resident Tennessee fan and expert out there. Obviously, I've seen a couple of games of them, the big marquee games out there. A mixed bag, obviously, when you watch the South Carolina game versus watching the Alabama game there, because, with the injury to Hendon Hooker kind of hurt the whole team as a whole. And their playoff hopes just kind of died down. It's kind of interesting. The South Carolina fans like to say, this is the game of the two sons of South Carolina, because South Carolina is the daddy of Tennessee and Clemson. That's what they like to say, because they beat both Clemson and Tennessee this year, which congratulations to them. I mean, a 1-point win is very important for their program. So we will see. We'll see how well they can do in 2023 attacking Clemson with 17 tight ends. Versus Clemson and Cade Klubnik. We will see how it goes. By the way, somebody should tell Beamer you don't need that many tight ends. You can't possibly need 17 tight ends on your roster.
He did the same thing last year with DBs. He took like 27 last year. So you want to talk about roster management problems with Clemson? Something's going to come to forbear with that situation in South Carolina sometime soon. But let them enjoy it.
We're going to the portal and we're getting a tight end.